Oh, you're gonna get squirted.
Yeah. This is a note to any Geek Pray Love listeners. We are now recording. And if you hear me with a little squirt gun, it's because my cat has jumped onto the table again. I'm not sorry. Neither is he. I am now joined by a couple of really nice gentlemen who have been writing some great music for the last few years together. I mean, more than a few. But I'm going to let them introduce themselves in the way that is most comfortable to them.
Hi, I'm Ryan O'Toole. I am the lead singer and songwriter and other half to my partner over here. And we are the musical duo behind Flora.
And I am that other half. I'm Max. I play keys in the band and do a lot of the business end stuff, and we write together, but we make a good team.
The cat was just spritzed.
Again.
Not the last time.
No, definitely not. If I know him. So I want to thank you guys for coming in. This is actually our second attempt at getting a podcast episode together. We had a little bit of a misfire. What was it, about a year ago, year and a half?
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, I think it was August,
Yeah.
maybe?
So yeah, I'm just really appreciative that you guys have come back to me.
No, thanks for having us. We're always good to see you and happy to be doing this again.
Yeah, and the main reason that you guys are coming in is because you have been, I assume you have a scheduled setup for your posts coming out with your new album kind of hiding there in the closet looking at us like it's not time yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm very excited to hear it. The first was the single that you released a couple of months ago. Is that part of the upcoming album?
The single we put out a couple months ago,
That would be Holly Wonder.
Yeah, that one was part of the original album that we put out, and we put it out because there's a crossfade on the album version, and so like if anyone wanted to put it on any sort of playlist, it would start with this terrifyingly loud bang that was just like bah! Like it was the ending of a different song. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to split that up so that it was more like a single.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that was the function of that. But
like
we do have
there.
Yeah. But we do have like news about that album and that music in general.
Yeah, I figured that's why you were here.
Yeah, for sure.
So go ahead and let them know what's going on.
Well, it's a crazy kind of roundabout way of how we've all felt about this album and how it's become a whole ordeal, really. But we put out the album last June, so that's about 14 months ago now.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we just had a different band in a way. We had a 7-piece group, and we just were kind of figuring out what our sound was and how we wanted to portray Flora music. Mm-hmm. And in the last 14 months, since we put out the album the first time, the album being A Sword of Holly, we've narrowed down what we want our sound to sound like, and we are now a 4-piece band instead of a 7-piece band, so that just naturally changed quite a bit. And so we did some thinking and reflecting on that music that we put out last June, and we decided it'd probably be a good idea to remix and remaster the album and put out a new track list and go in with Andrew Humphrey, who was our engineer.
Sun Cop.
Yes, of Sun Cop. Yes.
Sun Cop.
One of the most brilliant people in Chicago. He's
a mad genius.
Yeah, mad genius with his
That's
fingers.
how I've heard
and
everybody describe him.
He just is, for sure.
But so we went.
But he's also very sweet. He's not really bad, yeah.
Absolutely, just like a
sweet genius.
A very solid
genius.
human.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, we went
so
back
I was going to say, I thought that the sound was a little different on Holly Wonder when I listened to it earlier.
Yeah, well, actually, the version that you'd be speaking to was still the older version. And
was it?
Since then, yeah, we've changed quite a few things on the album, and we're getting excited to put it out again, probably by the end of this calendar year, maybe in the wintertime, around January or so, December, January. But we're going to be starting with an unveiling of the single Sleep, and that'll be coming out July 26th, accompanied by a music video. So we're also here to talk about that.
Excellent.
So yeah, lots of crazy stuff going on.
Yeah.
Since we've seen you last.
Are you willing to disclose like who directed the
video? Of course.
Cool.
Yeah,
yeah, for sure. So the video, I think we were talking to this guy for a while who I went to Columbia with, and he was really, really good, but his schedule was really busy. And so we were like, okay, we should probably reach out to someone else. And this was a while ago. This was like early on because we were like, we want this video. And then, because we were so ambitious right away. And so Max was like, well, I found this person, Hannah Welliver, who has a really good resume. She had directed an Ohm video, and she had worked with a team on a Jamila Woods video, the LSD one with Chance. And we were like, I mean, like, she probably won't answer us, but like, let's just email her.
Yeah.
We've adored Ohm and Macy Stewart since we were like little babies. I mean, I just know growing up with them and seeing Kids These Days and Marrow and all of their amazing endeavors. I mean, I remember being in like 7th grade and seeing Kids These Days was doing Coachella, you know?
Yeah.
And so following Macy since then was... I basically figured if Macy was working with this person, and Ohm as a duo, if they were working with Hannah, then that was good enough.
A worthwhile person to work with, yeah, definitely.
So we reached out to her and met up a few times to discuss it, and I think we filmed that video last April.
Yeah.
And we've been sitting on it for 16 months now.
The craziest thing about it was that she was like, yeah, I'm home for a week. Or like not home for a week, but home for like a period of time, and I want to tackle a bunch of new projects, so let's do this one and like let's meet up. Right. And we were like, she was like, yeah, what's up? When we met her, we were so floored because she was like, I just came back from hanging out backstage with Killer Mike, and we're like, what the fuck? Like,
she said, oh, just a casual trip to see my friend Angel Olsen in LA, and we were hanging out, and so I just got back, you know, thanks for meeting with me. We're like, thanks for meeting with me? Thanks for meeting with us? Like,
we're like, where are we? And we, like, she worked on Easy, I think all 3 seasons.
The Netflix show.
And, the Netflix show. Uh-oh, Mateo, you're getting squirted. Bye, Mateo.
The cat count is at 2 now for the recorded episode.
So anyway, so we met up with her, and we had this idea. Our good friend Ninos Baba, who's my roommate and our longtime friend, has a really, really brilliant mind, and he like sees videos when he hears songs, and he always just talks about that stuff. So we met up with him before we met up with Hannah, and we just brainstormed a video concept, and we like played him the song and told him what it was about. And do we want to talk about what it's about?
Yeah, totally. So it was hilarious when we pitched the idea to Hannah. We kind of just had a rough idea of what we wanted to be, and she just right off the bat was like, okay, I'm gonna run with this, like we can totally do this. And we were like, okay, like what do you need from us? And she goes, oh, don't even worry about it, I have a team of 20 people that I can put to work right away. And
we also had a little bit of a budget because we did a crowdfunding thing, so we were like, we want to make a good video here, and we had the resources for it, and so she was able to be like, oh, okay, we've got a budget, like I can do this with this many people, and we were like, holy fuck, like, it was so organized right away.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess talking about like the song and what the video is about and everything like that, it was one of the first songs we ever wrote as a Flora group years ago, many years ago.
Like, I think you started writing like halfway through college, so it was like your junior year.
16 maybe? I mean,
2015, 2016.
One of the first songs we ever worked on. But the song really, it's called Sleep, and was inspired by the idea that our parents, specifically my parents, don't go to bed with their phones next to them. And just thinking how crazy that is, because I always go to sleep with my phone next to me. It's my alarm clock.
Sure,
or at least that's what I tell myself, because I look at my phone all night long.
You're browsing Twitter till 3 a.m. or something like that.
Exactly. So that was like the inspiration for the song, and we just kind of with the video wanted to portray other ways in which being with your phone and technology connects us and also disconnects us from each other.
Absolutely. And
so the video features 2 of like the most amazingly talented dancers, Jasmine Taylor, who's now married. Congratulations to her.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yes. And Talia Grace, who are both just super phenomenally talented artists. Jasmine does singing as well, and just totally inspiring. They've worked on some incredibly huge projects.
Yeah, Jasmine a few years ago did a Cashmere Cat featuring Selena Gomez music video. Like, she choreographed it and danced on it solo, and it has millions of views on YouTube, and it's
20-some million.
Yeah, 20-something million. So
yeah.
But I knew her because she was best friends with my now fiance back in high school, and I've been dating Monica for a long time. So I knew Jasmine when she was just like this talented as fuck high schooler, and then pretty quickly I realized that she's like one of the most sought after dancers in the city. So
Oh wow.
but that connection opened the door to like get a meeting with her, and then she was like, oh yeah, because we were like, we want 2 dancers, you and someone else, and she was like, oh yeah, I have Talia, who I do, she's like my right hand, person who I do all my videos with. So they came in and
so like through the dancing and the way that they express their body movements in the video, it takes a little journey between the relationship with and without a phone, and it's supposed to have a little bit of a dichotomy in a sense that when they are in the quote-unquote real world with their phones, they're in the same room, they're in the same space, but they're not together. They're very
a little distracted.
Yeah, very much into their own phone or into their own headspace in that way. But then we kind of do a little flash to like a dream sequence that we filmed at stage 773 over on Belmont.
Okay.
It's like a really cool space that we had lights and it was supposed to be like the almost like the Stranger Things dark.
The upside down.
The upside down. Like
that's interesting.
But not scary upside down.
Not scary.
Just a good upside down.
Technology-less.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when they're in the dream sequence part of the video, they don't have their phones, and all of their movements are connected. They're in unison and dancing together, and it's showing the ways that, like, what it could be if they were more connected. But we do flashbacks to each side, the real world and then the dream sequence.
Very cool.
And by the end of the video, there's kind of the reveal of the whole time they weren't actually in the dream sequence. They were just scrolling through their phones in bed the whole time.
Oh.
So,
like
no spoilers. You still
But
gotta check
that's
it out.
But yeah, I think, and there's also some sequences of them like in the real world, like you said, without their phones, or like with their phones but also being connected. So there's just like different ways, because obviously I think like phones can connect us a lot, especially when we're physically apart. I think when we're physically together, there's definitely, for better or for worse, there's just a thing now.
They call it fubbing because
Yeah.
you're snubbing someone by looking at your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fubbing. I like it.
That sounds about right.
But yeah, so that whole video I think was this cool. That was like the thing we nailed the most. I think like right away was just because we got the right people on it and they came together. And our song was a big part of it, and Ninos' initial idea was a really big part of it. But then when Hannah took it over, it became something else. And then when Jasmine met with her and did her choreography, it just became like this music, dance, and film thing that's so cool.
I think totally by far the video is one of the just artistic statements that we're most proud of and put a lot of work and effort into, but it really stands on its own 2 legs, as you could say, or we're really happy with how it turned out. But more than anything, we feel really grateful that we decided to sit on it. We had the video ready
A year ago.
Over a year ago, before the original album ever came out, and we just thought at the time that we were going to be releasing too many things on top of each other by releasing the album and the video within the same month or so.
And even without releasing that video, your play numbers were very impressive for the first year that it was. The first 6 months that it was out, you got over 80,000 plays, didn't you?
I don't know about that many.
I saw it at the end of the year.
Bandcamp, we might have. Oh, you mean on the Spotify?
On Spotify, yeah.
Our Spotify final numbers altogether, that makes somewhat sense. And we had a lot of streams on Bandcamp too, because we got featured on that new and notable.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jess, that was awesome.
Yeah. And you also had that interview with the Deli magazine.
Yeah, that was really cool. And we did another one around that time too. Yeah. I'm blanking on the website. Voyage.
Yeah.
There you go. They interview all types of Chicago people, from they like break it up into the northwest, south, and east side, and they and then they just interview all these people who are doing things that they
I
think
like
are
that.
cool. Yeah.
Well, as the album was released and we started to think, okay, like when are we gonna put this video out? And it kind of just started to scare us because as much as those things we just mentioned were nice and successful parts of our release, we just felt like we were still kind of on the learning curve of figuring out what is the best way to release music and how do you get your name out there and how do you make people want to care about you and come to the show and all of the things that
I'm not even having to lead you guys. You're already starting to go into tips.
But
Keep it rolling, Max, please.
Since we were trying to like grapple with those big questions, we just got kind of scared to put out the video because we didn't want to put all of our eggs in one basket and then have it flop.
Exactly.
So we decided to just wait, and as time went on, we were seeing the physical changes in the band that were making our sound different. We were seeing just the ways that the band was just headed in a new direction, and so we thought that we still want to put out this video and make it a big deal, but we thought what better way to do it than to redo the album the way that we think it would be better and improved upon now, and then start it all again with releasing this video first and then having the new album come out pretty soon. But it was, looking back on it, a mature decision for a band that made some very immature decisions.
Yeah, it was a mature decision amidst a lot of fast decisions. And I think like something we can, if it's cool, I think we can talk about really get into why we're doing the album re-release, and I think there's a lot of like valuable lessons that we can drop
only
in
what
that.
you guys feel comfortable with. I don't want,
no,
we're
for
an
sure.
open
This is not a gossip podcast.
No.
That's being in a band sometimes. It's
Yeah,
like this shit that happens behind the scenes. I was in a band where people were doing the nasty with each other and they knew they were not supposed to. And it led to rifts within the group, and it's something that I regret not handling better every day sometimes, but then there's other times where I think, fuck those guys.
Well, any band's gonna have band drama, but that would get ugly.
Yeah.
That's gonna get touchy.
Yeah, and unless you're writing Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, I don't think it's worth it. Like, but yeah, so I think like I think our entire because Max and I, we had most of the album written before we announced. Oh my God, Mateo has picked a different route to enter the. He went under the table and is crawling up Sam. Right
And he
now.
thinks that he's made it,
Yeah.
but you have not, my son. Down you go.
You won't get spritzed though.
No.
But you, yeah.
More watchful eye.
That was awesome. So anyway, I think we had most of that album written before we even announced Flora, and we wrote most of it when we were away at different colleges.
Right.
And so we were just tunnel vision.
Yeah,
like
there was no
this.
telling us to do otherwise. We were gonna do that album and we were gonna do it our way, and there was just no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah, no, it was very much like this is going to
It's
happen.
time.
And like it's time. It felt like it was time.
We could have never moved on if we didn't just do that album that way at the time that we did it.
Absolutely. But I think the problem with it was that we like spent our entire first year like just like with our sights set on the release show and the release, but we weren't doing a lot of the groundwork that you should be doing just to start a band.
Why don't you go a little bit more into that?
Yeah,
I think that honestly might have been our biggest mistake we ever made in our first year as a band, was that we did this album and we were ready for it to be out and to share it with everyone and everything, but we put all of our eggs into the basket of release show. We're gonna have a giant release show and then it'll be out and then it'll be good.
Right.
And it was a very giant release show. There were a couple hundred people there and it was really nice, and we had a really great night. It was one of those like, this is what we live for type of nights, you know what I mean? But then you wake up the next day and you go, scratch your head and go, what do we do now?
Now I got to go back to work.
And we didn't do any of we could have sat on that album for a little bit longer, maybe even just a couple more months, and then we could have planned out a better way to have done a couple more like visual enhancements with the album and get people excited in a way that wasn't just like a show, like we could have done things like prepared more media outlets and done a little bit more networking or more just getting our name out there more without it being like we're a nobody band without an album out, so we have to put an album out so that way we'll become a band. We could have just been much more patient with the project, and I think if we had done that, then we would have made some of the choices that we are making now in its re-release.
Yeah.
Like just some musical edits, some track list changes, like we said, better outrolling of promo media outlets on all of those things. But I think since, like we said, there was no telling us to do it a different way at the time, it's one of those things that you just learn from your own experience, or I wouldn't call it failure per se, but like sometimes you have to eat a little dirt to realize what it tastes like,
Whoa.
Sure.
Wow, is that an actual saying?
I just think that,
I made that up.
that is a good one. I gotta say, I think that's kind of an interesting perspective. It's a very humble perspective for someone who, like, we rushed this out. I'm not sure if the issue was that it isn't quite the vision that you have now, or if it was that there were just things. I mean, if you're re-releasing it, then there's no real problem.
Yeah. No,
now you get, like you say,
proud.
you get to really, really focus on the details.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that we, so the first year was so tunnel visioned with that I think the year 2, which we announced Flora in June of 2017. So like June is kind of our year, or like halfway mark in the year, but for us it's kind of like
Flora calendar.
The Flora calendar, yeah. Like June is kind of how we like mark the years so far. And I think from like June 2018 to where we're at now was us doing a lot of like first we had to question a lot of things with us, and then we had to do a lot of the work that if we had known we would have done like from the start, just like really 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 foundation building things that we kind of skipped over.
Gotcha.
And I think that's because Flora was so much based on a project and less on like a career band. It was like everything went into a project. And like I've had those impulses in my life and have like made a couple of those projects happen when I was younger, and so like that's just how I am, and I like bring people aboard to make that happen. But that's why I think year 2 was just like so important. It was hard. It was really hard. We did a lot of like questioning and soul searching and stuff, and we kind of beat ourselves up a bit, and then I think we reached a point where we're like, all right, we're done feeling sorry, and we're just gonna like do better forward. Now. Take steps forward for sure.
So I mean, you did mention that you used to be a 7-piece band, and you've shaved a few people off of there. And can I ask in what sections, and how has that changed things?
Luckily, we are blessed that nothing was ever ugly. Everything, we're all on great terms with everyone who's ever played with us, and
that's good.
Really thankful for that, because we're 2 piano players. We can't do it. We need a drummer. We need a bassist. We need to, at least at the very core, can't be out here doing a piano vocal duo. So
I mean, we could, but
it wouldn't work that way.
It's not what we're going for.
So like the guitarist ended up moving to Nashville. So at the time we thought about replacing a guitarist, and we actually did play a show or 2 with a different guitarist, and then just that didn't work out either. And so
he couldn't make a show, and we were
that was great. So we had a show at Cole's, must have been
September
of 2018.
Yeah.
And the guitarist kind of canceled on us maybe 4 or 5 days before that show.
Ouchies.
And so we were like, oh no, what are we gonna do? And what we did was we all had a few more drinks than we would have usually had for that show, and just said, okay, we'll just play it without guitar, just play everything normal without guitar, see how it goes. And then after that show, we were like, that was good. We should do that more often, or just do that in general. And so from there...
Oops, for sure.
Exactly. From there, we just said, okay, well, I guess we don't need a guitar anymore. We could always add supplemental guitar, but it's not like part of the core foundation, being that we're both piano players.
True.
And then we were playing with a dear friend of ours, Carolina, who was playing saxophone. And then when
nailed some amazing solos on that album.
She is so talented.
Yeah, she's great.
Yes, and when we went guitarless for a little while, we thought maybe we could add double keys with her playing keys and myself playing keys and Ryan singing it.
She's a freaky good keys player.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my god.
she's just like one of those next level musicians
Sure.
who you're just like, ooh.
Yeah.
Like practices all the time, like really, really disciplined, really smart, is just like so good. Yeah, absolutely.
And that ended up ending because she wanted to pursue some of her own endeavors, which we 100 million% support, and thought that was, absolutely what she should do if she wanted to do that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So, and we kind of laugh about it now that she was too good of a keyboardist for us. Like, I'm way too flowy because I have my like classical French piano playing background, and she's just, like we said, like meticulous, and she just like is so brilliant that sometimes it didn't work out exactly how we had envisioned it being, maybe, but it was a totally kind and clean, loving break there, and so then that's from 7 to 6 to 5, and then
Claire
yes.
left shortly after, who was
A harmony
singing with
singer.
us. Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, and it was like I was definitely moving into the new songs being like, I'm gonna incorporate her a lot more and like use her voice in a really cool way. But it became clear too that she is just so sought after for things and like had her own things that she needed to pursue, and so that was like shortly after Carolina.
Yes.
And then suddenly we were like, we're a 4-piece.
Luckily, though, we'll still have the opportunity sometimes to bring either Claire or Carolina back out on stage for just like maybe a one song on a random show if it's calls for it.
Yeah, we did that in June. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it was fun, especially because it was an all ages show, and so my School of Rock students got to come see us.
Very nice.
Carolina and Claire both work there too.
Oh, okay.
So when they came up, the students were like, well, it's funny, when Claire came up, they were like, ah, and then when I was like, we have one more guest, they were like, I wonder who it's going to be. Like, very much new, but that was a fun
Shout
show.
out to our biggest fan base, which is the
School of Rock students.
Community.
They are
Shouts to the School of Rock Chicago.
Yeah, they're
absolutely.
cooler than we could hope to be.
Yeah, I wish I did School of Rock when I was a kid. I would be so much cooler than I am now had I done that.
Yeah.
Cool's all relative, man.
Yeah.
Cool's relative, but those kids are pretty cool. And they're really good at their instruments. But anyway, yeah, so we became 4, and that was right before a tour, right? Yeah, or like our little first tour, like our 3-stop, and then a Chicago show. And we were like, okay, here we go. Like, we're going really kind of minimal here.
Compared to the recorded material, at
Yes,
least.
absolutely.
Right.
But we had new stuff that we were writing that was tailored more towards the minimal type of thing. And I think we were all like, we'll all be in our own place to kind of do our thing. Like for example, without me having a harmony singer anymore, I could definitely change things live and not worry about having to lock the harmonies.
Right.
Max didn't have to worry about locking in with another keyboard.
Yeah, the space just really opened up.
Yeah, all of a sudden we were like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, we like this space a lot, which was a big change in thinking because we like so much music that's like very lush and layered. And so I think we assumed right away that was the music we wanted to make. But we found, also by necessity too, that like just less people you need to bring into this thing you're trying to do is
Less
better.
complicated,
Less
yeah.
complicated, like, because everyone has different dreams, and it's really difficult to get people to latch onto yours and be like,
Well, we've made fun of ourselves and had many talks with other bands that when you try to do your like opus project, your shining glory achievement from right off the bat, you're not ready for it yet. So for us to do an album that was really intricate in its arrangements and featured musicians that aren't necessarily like in the band, or we weren't necessarily like playing with consistently all the time, it would have, it makes more sense to us now to keep it simple, to keep this space open, to work with like what we know and what we're good at, rather than try to like aim high. I'm sure there will be a day when we have intricate arrangements once again, but
and we still will, absolutely. They're just going to be coming from like the instruments we can play,
right?
And they're gonna, we're just going to be, and this is something we did, and we'll talk about with the remix of the album, but we just are trying to get more to like what part is essential for this section of the song, and if it's not essential, it doesn't need to be there,
right?
Because then it's like it just opens your ear. You can just put your ear on the other stuff that is. essential. And like the more you listen to music, the more you're like, oh, it's made up of a few really good simple pieces a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, we got down to 4, and then we loved that, and that was really fun. But Max and I were talking about what if I got a synth, because that was kind of the direction we were moving, and we were missing a little bit of things filling out the space, because our only harmony instrument was the piano. And so I was like, you're only getting the piano's chords, and like otherwise it's just bass and drums and my voice. So it was like we wanted something that could bring out these big moments in the show and like fill out space. And I love playing keys. I love doing it live. So we thought it was like a good idea and a good direction. And then we just bought that synth today. So from now on, that's gonna be
play a role.
Yeah.
Well, we can shamelessly plug that the first time we'll be performing with the current setup of double synth or double keys would be we're going to Minneapolis and Milwaukee August 15th and 16th.
Nice.
And then we're playing at Subterranean on August 26th.
Very nice.
Yeah, so the first debuting of a new little lineup for us. It'll be fun.
Excited to see you at the Sub T show.
Oh,
that'll be really fun. We're gonna be in the basement, which we haven't done before, which I'm excited about. One of our mottos for this year in seeking shows is trying to like do maybe some smaller venues that we can really pack, as opposed to like trying to stretch out the big ones.
Right.
Big ones are fun, and like if you have a really built up show, you can nail them and be like, oh yeah, that was awesome.
Right.
But it's hard to do that consistently early on.
The more I talk to people who have been playing for 10, 15, 20 years, the more I hear that like the smaller the room, the better the experience for everybody else involved. You might get a little squashed, but you're gonna be 5 foot from that band, as compared to like this huge arena show, which granted is exciting in its own right, but it's you kind of lose that being in touch with the band. Like one of my favorite shows to date is actually from a Michigan band, Wolfpack. Those guys played a free show at the Tonic Room, and that place is
oh my god, I
very
can't even
small.
imagine seeing that band at Tonic Room. My god.
And this was right before they popped.
Yeah.
And made all that royalty money off of Spotify for those few weeks.
Yeah, definitely
Brilliant idea. And they just you know them. They're amazing.
Yeah.
They did musical chairs on their last song, and they did a medley which ended up with the drummer doing a Dead Ringer impression of Stevie Wonder, and I just sat there and closed my eyes and listened, and I felt like Stevie was 15 feet from me, and it was this amazing thing. So 100% support the going for the venues that might not hold as many people, but will for sure still pack like a great experience for everybody involved.
Yeah, and I think it's like you feel like the more people that are packed into this room, and like the more you look around, the energy just becomes so much more compact. It's like more intimate, and it's like you feel like when you're seeing a band and you're like, oh yeah, they won't be able to play here that much longer because they're really packing it. It feels like, oh, they're doing something for sure, as opposed to the other way around. If you're playing a really big venue that you can't really fill, it momentum-wise, I mean, you might have the same people there, but like it's just a different vibe.
Yeah, 30 people in a 500-person capacity venue makes you feel like you're doing something wrong.
Definitely.
But 30 people in a 50 capacity venue makes you feel like you're the coolest person ever. So
and maybe you make more of those direct connections with fans.
Right,
to
exactly.
Make them like the longtime fans,
There's less pressure on people to like, oh, there's a huge line, I don't want to whatever, oh, it's expensive, but like, no, this is true like independent music where the musicians really care about like their fans having a good time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I think some of my favorite shows, like you were just saying, are ones where I saw artists before they were at that next level, and you were just like, ooh.
It's a little feather in your cap, isn't it?
It's nice to be like, you see where they're going.
Yeah.
Like, and you're like, ooh, it's not going to be like this that much longer. And that makes it feel really special.
Yeah.
We were just at a house show for Uma Blue's music video release about 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago.
2 weeks, yeah.
And we saw Tasha, Cold Beaches, Uma Blue, and Pixel Grip in a basement. And geez, I mean, Tasha's on the Pitchfork lineup.
Right.
Pixel Grip was just out like
They were on that
West
Empty Bottle
Fest,
Festival,
and-
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it was packed and it was a basement, but like it was so intimate and cool to see and really like inspiring. All of those bands and artists are just destroying it. They're so good. And to see them in such a like small intimate space and then hang out with each other and everything like that,
Very cool.
it is so much more special than if I would just see Tasha at Pitchfork where there's gonna be thousands of people.
Yeah,
there, you know
and
what I mean?
Tasha especially, like, I have no trouble saying that was one of the craziest performances I've ever seen, because you could just hear every breath that someone took.
Mhm.
And she just like has to spell over the room for like 30 minutes, and everyone was getting chills. Like, you could just feel it, and she was working the crowd just like a
Yeah.
pro. And then on the flip side, seeing Pixel Grip in that basement was nuts, because they just have like this huge thumping like house sound in these synths
Right,
and this
yeah.
bass, and you're just like, this is so cool in a basement. Like,
Mhm.
it was great.
Two different types of like getting the chills, you know. Like,
Yeah.
But both for all of the shows that night, I was goosebumps head to toe.
Yeah. So something like that, and that gave us inspiration to be like searching more for DIY opportunities as well that we can kind of curate, because they were able to make it look so, they like created a world down there with the decorations, and it was really impressive.
Cool.
Very immersive and like super well thought out, and I love that type of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where we're moving at and stuff. But
Yeah, I mean, with all of these things that we're saying, I'm sure I always joke that give it another year and we'll look back on the past year and think that we were so silly and naive for what we thought then. Now, you know, so I'm sure that both with shows, with albums, with anything, there's always just so much room to grow, and you got to learn from your own experience. I mean, you have to just get out there and do it to know what works for you, you know?
Yeah, that's. I mean, I love hearing that. I
Yeah.
love hearing that so much, because it's you mentioned earlier that like when you put out your first album, that you were kind of focusing more on it as a project and less as more like a thing that could be a part of your life for a very long time.
Right.
And something that you will, I mean, not only rely on as like your venture, but like a creative output, like a creative outlet, and it's a really great thing, because I spoke with like Milk Belly last year. Those vintage episodes, little shameless plug myself,
Yes.
are going to be released interspersed with these new episodes. But I got to speak with Milk Belly right before they played Wrigley Field with Dave Grohl and the Foo
that's
Fighters.
insane.
And I just I felt so lucky, and they just kept thanking me, and I just kept going, guys and lady, please,
Yeah.
please,
Yeah.
you know,
Don't
like
thank
just
me.
being in a room with people that so honor just like being able to talk about like the tour that they did, and to their aspirations for the future, and also like again the fact that these people who have played venues from large to small across this country and others, they all said the same thing. I think I like the basement better.
Yeah.
And
It's
that's
crazy how
yeah.
that goes.
Absolutely.
I love that.
It's just a different vibe. It really is. I mean, in that type of setting, I have to be careful about not hitting my head a little bit. I was like,
Sure.
like I was looking around and I was like, man, if I was on that stage. One of the guitarists for Cold Beaches
Oh, yeah.
is, I don't know his name, but he is a wicked performer, and he like thrashes around the entire time, and he had to be hunched because he's a tall man, so he had to be hunched over the entire performance, but he was still thrashing
around
around,
there, yeah.
like it was crazy. And I guess I don't jump up and down a lot, so, but there's a lot of
You're more of like a Mick Jagger style hip swaggery.
We call
Yeah.
him
Dancing
David
man.
Byrne.
There we go.
Top
Okay.
guy. This is the,
Yeah.
robotic.
Oh my god. Yeah, I was told that I was a mashup of David Byrne and Mick Jagger, and I think as far as frontmen go, that's like a good description.
Sure.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Can't really argue with the record.
Yeah. That's cool. But anyway, yeah, like those types of venues and shows and things are the coolest. And we'll definitely be pursuing more of those types of things, just like changing our thinking on how we've tried to go about doing shows.
Absolutely.
So they're more front end promotion kind of things, more things leading up to the release.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just, you know, being patient, but like working with a purpose and like knowing why you're going to be doing the things that you're doing, instead of just kind of throwing darts into the air and seeing what
Sure.
sticks, because we've done a lot of that, and usually it doesn't stick.
And there's a time for that, but I think
Yeah.
that we don't want to just be completely throwing them without any
aimless,
plan.
yeah.
Without any
Right.
plans. Yeah. I remember one of our friends, Emily Blue, she's like a really big pop artist in Chicago, and her social media presence is insanely good. And we talked to her about releases, and she was just talking to us about how she spends so much time thinking and planning and executing every release now that it's just, we were inspired by that, I
Yeah.
think, to just take releases really seriously and not be willy-nilly about them, and everything has some sort of promotion and idea behind it and stuff.
Yeah, it's funny, even it seems unnatural for myself at least to be doing all of these social media things, because I do, but I don't love like having my own Instagram and Facebook and everything, and just like doing all the promotional type of things. But then when it comes to the Flora social media presence, it's just, you don't have an option. It's 2019, you have to be doing those things. You have to constantly keep your Instagram story entertaining and drawing people in, and some of those things do feel unnatural for sure, but it's a certain you just gotta have to grin and bear it and just really work at it, and always be trying to improve those aspects of the band, because it's a big deal these days. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You know,
It's like the
Yeah.
deal.
It is.
I mean, we will get to points that we want to get to when labels and booking agents and all those people are looking at our traction that we've made on social media and be like, I want to work with them.
Right.
I think that's just really how it goes. Like, you can try. I mean, we've spent the first couple of years being like, we'll be really good and people want to work with us, but it's like everyone's really good. So
Right.
like,
Sure.
you
And
know,
anybody can say that too.
anybody can say that. Absolutely.
You
So-
have to show you've put in the work.
Yeah.
And I mean, speaking of putting in work, like you guys, you have a really impressive network of connections, and I'm curious to know. I mean, are all of them just people that you have met along the way? Like, what, when doing shows? Are they people that like you knew from school, or like how many connections do you have from outside those realms? Like things like that.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Chicago is just the absolute greatest.
The best, the
as
best,
far
the
as
best.
the
best.
everyone will
Yeah.
say that about their city, I'm sure. But oh my gosh, I am just so inspired by all of the amazing content and artists doing it in Chicago. Like, it's equally difficult, because you see all these things on social media and you think, I need to be more like that. I need to be better. I need to, be on that level as they are. But then at the same time, it's good inspiration to make you work harder for it, because you want to be amongst your peers who are killing it too. And so,
Right.
I mean, I could rattle off 50 artists that we know in Chicago that we just like adore so much, and some are bigger than us, some are on the same playing field, some are smaller, but everybody is so like welcoming, and there's no room for BS. I guess
Right.
like you have to be authentic with your true self, and anyway, I'm rambling now. But anyway, Chicago's the best.
Chicago's the best.
It is interesting because we're both from Chicago. I was
Right.
born and raised in Rogers Park, and he's born and raised in Edgewater, and so there are certainly some Chicago music scene people that we just knew from growing up. I went to Lincoln Park for grade school and stuff, and
Right.
just
So
knowing a lot
hence
of people
kids
through
these
there.
days.
Yes, yeah. I actually was in a jazz band, like my grade school jazz band, and I played the clarinet, and to my left was Vic Mensa, who played the saxophone.
Awesome.
And to my right was Nico Segal, who played
Plays the trumpet, Tiny trumpet.
And I'm just walking down the street of Milwaukee Avenue the other day. I see Nico. He goes, "Max, what's up, man? How are you?" I'm like, "How am I?" Like, I saw you play the Surf Pitchfork show in front of like 50,000 people.
Right.
Like, geez, man, that's so talk about doing it. They are just the epitome of doing it.
Yeah, definitely.
As in Chicago too, but so like knowing people from being from here is a big part of it, and another just big part of it is we try our best to go out to as many shows as we can and just
Right.
put our faces into the sphere of the scene. And
Yeah, Max
always-
is really good at partying with people. He is, and that's really good networking.
yeah,
like,
I'm really good at partying.
No, I
But
mean, I'm not, so like it takes skill. Like
There's something to be said about
Yeah.
doing a little cheers and having a beer with somebody who
Sure.
you admire, and then after a little while, rather than it being a one-way relationship, it's a two-way relationship, and you become friends and
That's good.
see them at the next show, and you say you can go from there. So maybe with the people we really admire, we've weaseled our way into being their friends. We've fooled them, but it's,
Hoodwinked.
yeah, they're definitely hoodwinked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other biggest things are just like the Columbia connections are really big
Yes,
because
yes.
I went there my final 2 years, and that gave me anything like I needed when it came to like people who were working in music or film or anything like. And I made a point my final 2 years there to like people who were really impressing me and people that and this might be a little selfish, but also it's good to like establish two-way relationships with people.
Yeah.
But just like seeking out people that I was like, oh yeah, we could work together and do some really cool stuff. But like we said, the best ones are the ones that benefit them too. Like you always want
Yeah.
it to be like a two-way thing.
We always joke that all the student loans that were acquired from Ryan going to Columbia College was just about the networking. All that that money is only for the networking aspects, and
Yeah, my life will be
a
in
music
debt,
degree
but
doesn't go so far.
I will never show that degree to anyone because it's not real. But the connections are real, and
Yeah.
that was really good. And I think just with all of these, when we really think someone is killing it and we're a big fan, we reach out to them. Like we make a point to become.
Just simple as that.
We just do.
outreach,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, it's like when you're meeting them, you might be awkward about it, but the thing is they're feeling awkward too a lot of the time. You just gotta like remember that like their larger than life presence on stage and social media is not who they are as people. It's just a part of them, but like it's much easier to talk to the people, because it's like, oh, just another person. Like, and then when you get to that level, you're like, oh, cool, that's like a networking connection. And I think just like seeking out people that we're really impressed with and that we think are killing it and that we like want to be like. Like when you think about you're most like you are like the 5 friends you hang out with most and stuff. It's almost that same thing of like we want to be those type of artists, so like we want to hang around those type of artists.
Yeah. No, it's a true blessing for real to like really admire someone and then a few months later find yourself just being friends with them, and it's totally natural and just it grows from there. That is such a cool thing to experience.
Yeah, and supporting them too is big, I think, because it's like that whole what goes around comes around thing. So just
Definitely.
like genuinely supporting them when you've made that connection, going to their shows, commenting on their Instagram posts. I mean, just like that type of stuff, I think just creates that community that we all feel. And it's like, I feel like every day I find out about 5 new artists in Chicago who are killing it, and it's like
There's so goddamn many.
and that's
so
like
great.
sometimes it's like it's so great, and like you said, it can be a little bit of a curse sometimes because you're like, how are we gonna stand out? Or sometimes
Right.
there's so many people doing it that so many people are killing it that you feel like everyone's ahead of you.
Absolutely.
But you have to remind yourself a couple things, which is like there's as many people, if not more, at your level who are like gonna burn out, and it's like if you don't burn out and you just keep doing it, I think that's a huge part of it. That's what we talk about is like we always point to like
Long
5
game.
years as like you should be doing it like legit for 5 straight years, and like if you're doing it well, people will know who you are and stuff. But
Right.
like
Yeah.
I don't know if I would consider 2 out of those 3 years for us. I'm almost thinking like 5 years maybe from now, because we feel so clear-headed now and we have a really good idea, but it's an arbitrary number. It's just that idea of like
Putting in the time.
Yeah, because everyone who's killing it, like I do this thing now where I like go back to their Instagram and I'll just like scroll and I'll try to find their earliest posts that they have. And a lot of bands have posts from like 2004 14 where they're playing a
Okay.
show and 6 people liked it.
Right.
And it's a good reminder to me that, like, just because you found out about them now doesn't mean they just started now. Like,
Right.
they've been doing it for a long time, and that's
True,
why
true.
they're really killing it. So that's been a good thing for me. And then also just, like, other people's successes are not your failures is, like, a huge thing that I try to remind myself.
Absolutely, you took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
because you just discovered someone,
Yeah.
they've been put in work. That's why you discovered them.
Yeah, literally. Like, there's gonna be so many people who just discover us 8 years down
Yeah.
the line, you know, because that's how the nature of it.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's totally okay. You know.
That's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like continuing
Yeah.
to do it.
We're always really hard on ourselves, but it's like the long game of being like we can't be too hard on ourselves until we really feel like we're gratified within ourselves of what we've done, you know. So and that takes time. I mean, I don't think that'll happen for maybe like a decade from when we first start. You know what I mean?
It's
We've always
also-
talked about
yeah.
being into our 30s with this, you know, and we
Right.
started when we were teenagers. So
Yeah, definitely. And it's like you'll have the moments along the way that kind of hit you where you're like, oh shit, this is a milestone. This is really, really cool. And those are what keep you going. And there's like a lot of little ones and there's some bigger ones. And the more that people begin to kill it, the more those happen frequently. Like a perfect example is Kaina.
Mhm.
She just had like the most
Oh,
legendary month.
Her record release show. She had the pop up. She's going on tour with Kuko. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
Insane. Like but she's someone who like maybe people are just discovering her now, but I saw her play a show 5 years ago, and I know that
so
she's
hoping you would bring this up. Please
Yes,
continue.
yes.
She
Yes.
has been working her fucking ass off.
Mama Say.
Like, Mama Say was the band I saw,
Yeah.
and I was like,
at the
they're
training,
amazing.
were you at that?
I was
training?
not there, but
Okay.
I've heard recordings. You know,
Yeah.
just
They were awesome.
she's the best.
She's the real deal, and like has been so inspiring. And I was at that show last night, and it was like so powerful to watch her face watching dreams come true, and like
Yeah.
just looking out. She sold out Lincoln Hall. That's so impressive.
Dope.
Like that's so impressive.
Yeah.
And like seeing that, and me just being like, you know, putting in that hard work can make moments like
Yeah.
this happen. It was just like, and it was also like there was like an all-star cast of Chicagoans there last night too.
Mhm.
Like it was awesome.
Rich Jones was probably there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw,
yeah.
I
Just-
saw
just
Jamila
the
Woods
crew.
there. I was
Yeah.
like,
Hey.
oh my god, like so crazy. Just a lot of people, and but like yeah, she like you can be tricked into thinking because it's her debut record, she just like
Yeah.
just popped.
Blew up,
But like
no, not at all.
no. She's like just been doing.
She's also
everything.
been behind the scenes. She went on tour with Raven Lene and one half of Hate Brand, Eric Montanez, who is like half of the management team for Chance the Rapper.
Yeah,
And
we've been
she
following.
was featured on the Saba album.
Yep.
she did the Tiny Desk. with
She's
Saba.
behind the scenes all over the place, and
All
it's
over the
it's
place.
so great to see like all of that coming to such
Yeah.
great. And I'm also loving how much of a push Super Records is pushing behind
Yeah,
her.
Super's doing great. Yeah.
Super, you know,
Yeah.
I've known Glenn for a few years now. Glenn is one of the founding partners of Super Records,
Mhm.
and along with Namdi and their other partner Steven, they've all been, you know, I'm sure scouting and trying to find artists that not only exemplify to them like Super's artistic mission, but also just stuff that they dig.
Yeah.
And it's just great to see, because he's been talking to me about Kaina for a good while.
Oh yeah. Well, she has been, like you said, if you're in the know, you know that
Yeah.
she's been doing everything behind the scenes. I mean, like she's been best friends with the Oh My's for so long, who
Yeah.
have been a band for a long time.
Very long time.
And they have been putting their work in and have made a career for themselves. Like,
Mhm.
Well, we've
Yeah.
been saying too, it's almost to a creepy extent the amount that we're like, okay, this whole unveiling of Kaina's album is so inspiring that we're gonna take it from like step by step. Like, what did she do?
And break down her
8
approach.
months ago, 6 months ago, 4
Right.
months ago, everything leading up, because it has just been like
So
near
inspiring.
perfect. I mean, she is destroying it, and it's inspiring, and it makes you want to put in that work too. You know,
Mhm.
on your own fronts.
yeah. And like it makes you feel like time does bring you places if you're putting in that hard work.
Yeah.
Because this was like, I think she's a similar age to us, but that's another thing that tricks me sometimes is like, that person's my age and they're doing that. It's like, no, that person's been doing this long
Yeah,
time.
guys,
you know?
Macaulay Culkin is only a couple years older than me, so.
Oh my god, yeah. it's not the right path to go down.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
But yeah, just such an inspiring artist and like an incredible record, and just like it felt like a Chicago moment, like a big Chicago moment, and that was so cool.
That's good.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
And like we were saying, these big Chicago moments are happening every other week. I mean, like we just said, we went to that
I was
house
just
show
saying
in
to someone
town,
else,
and
like
mixed
that
it with
every
the
day
movie.
there is just a fucking pile of events happening in Chicago.
Yeah.
I know it seems more prevalent in the summer, but like even through spring, fall, and winter, there are shows happening every
the time.
night in multiple locations for any kind of flavor you could be
I
looking
know.
for.
That's nuts.
I was just telling Ryan I really wanted to go to a show recently, and I had a headache, so I decided not to go. And then I felt so bad about it, but like you can't make them all. There's so
Yeah,
many shows
there's
here
so
that
many.
are just there's just too many, not too many, but so many good artists that are killing it. It's amazing. And
Right.
You gotta soak it in.
Yeah, and that goes back to us too,
Yeah.
being like, any night that you're picking, you're competing with these other artists too, so
True.
it can be like
Mhm.
kind of crazy. But there's so many people here that love music that, like, you know, there's room for everyone
Yeah.
of the fans.
It makes like curating lineups real fun for setting up shows.
I love
There's-
curating lineups.
Yeah, because we have
Yeah.
such a pool to choose from as far as the amazing Chicago artists go.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you mentioned Sun Cop earlier, the recently defunct Pookie, but
Mhm.
I don't
Oh,
think they're
yes.
playing shows anymore. But like, are you?
I don't think so.
No, I played with Pookie the first
Right.
two,
I wasn't sure if
3,
you stayed
4.
on with them. Yeah.
No, I'm not playing with them, but yeah, I think a couple of them are moving.
Yeah,
Mm.
Yeah,
which is sad, but wish them the best, you know.
yeah.
Of course.
But yeah, we played a couple shows with them, and we played, I don't know, I mean, just like a lot of our lineups have had really cool people on them.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one of our favorite lineups we had recently this year was Human Bloom and Dejari at Beat Kitchen.
Right. Yeah.
And Human Bloom is a friend of ours, a group of friends of ours from Columbia that Ryan knew, and they had been putting into work for a while as well, but then they released a single, and I mean, I think overnight it felt like they got like 30,000 streams.
They
or
got a
something,
lot of
or
in like
one
the
day.
first. Yeah, I
But
mean,
it's amazing, you know. It goes to show you never know when. I guess you have to be putting in that work, but you never know when
those moments
shit hits the
happen.
fan.
Yeah.
You know, like
Right.
sometimes it will go your way.
Yeah.
But that show was amazing. We've played with so many great artists. I will leave someone out if I start naming all of them, so I'll avoid that. But it's a blessing.
yeah, and I think it's one of those things where we draw from a lot of different styles, so we have fun stretching our limits in terms of who we can play with and
Right.
stuff. But I think for the most part, like, we've had some shows where we're like, that wasn't really cohesive, but we've also had other ones where we're like, man, that was like 3 very different acts, but they all complemented each other really great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And like that is just such a Chicago thing, to just have all these people to be like, all right, now we're gonna reach out to so and so, and now so and so, and try to put this together, and it
The
makes
phone tree. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's like when you were, a kid and you needed to spread messages through your family. Like you would text your auntie or something, and then it just kind of spreads from there.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so that's just like a super cool thing. We could go on and on about why we're
let's
doing
get
it in
back to
Chicago.
the
but
re-release,
The
because
re-release, yeah.
I want to pick your brains on it a little bit more before we wrap up and kind of do the roundup that I like to put at the end of every episode, where
Absolutely.
we kind of touch on each of the lessons that you guys have bestowed upon us
Yes.
today. And ahead of that, thank you so much
No,
again
thank you. This
for
has been
coming.
fun.
I love that
So-
we're teaching lessons too.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've been learning. We've been learning a lot of them, and now we're like, all right, we've written a little book. Here you go.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So the new album, the re-release of A Sort of Holly. How in the first one you kind of described it as intricate, and there were it was kind of intensely layered. There were a lot of things happening. So should we still kind of be expecting the almost glammy kind of the? I felt a little bit of Supertramp. I felt a little bit of Queen.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I felt
I like
like
that.
just kind of those arena rock bands kind of in there. Are we
Yeah.
still going to be feeling some of that in the
I
new one?
think
Or
yes
smaller
and
extent.
no.
Yeah.
Yes and no. I
Uh-huh.
think that like the biggest the biggest like thing musically for me was to strike a balance between how we are starting to sound now with the space and everything kind of being focused on the piano, but also understanding that there are songs on that album that the guitar maybe was like the better instrument of choice there, or was like just things we can't recreate now, but understanding that like that is okay too. So not just like taking away everything good just because it didn't work with what we could do live now. Like just being like, some of these songs are studio creations, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, not
like,
everything needs to be played live.
Yeah.
That's a good way to look at it.
Absolutely. So I think that it was like trying to find that perfect balance.
We kind of had this realization that just because you have, call it 7 instruments or tracks on the song, it doesn't mean that every instrument has to be in the song for the entire duration of the song. So we kind of did a lot of, or not a lot, but a tasteful amount of rearranging in the studio with Andrew, that we, instead of having the guitar and piano be in the song from beginning to end, it's like there are sections in which one is brought out more, or one takes a back seat, or is completely out for just the verse or the chorus, or whatever it may be.
We did take a lot of things completely out during sections.
In doing so, I think tasteful is the right word. Like, whereas the arrangements are still intricate in some spots, it's just we picked them more tastefully than we had before when we looked at it as our opus project, where it has to be amazing.
Yeah. And we, like I said, the essential parts. That's really what I was going for, was like, what is essential right here? So like, if the guitar wasn't doing something interesting, if the piano wasn't really adding something, if those harmony vocals that I really liked just weren't that great, like it was a lot of, like, we didn't re-record anything besides we added some MIDI keyboard parts, like some Mellotron parts. Andrew has like a really good Mellotron plugin, so we added that, which is like, for those of you that don't know, it is a keyboard that was popular in the 60s, and it emulates other instruments. The most common one is the flute sound, and it's popular on Strawberry Fields Forever and a lot of like Zombies tracks, and it was just really popular in the 60s. But anyway, we added that, but otherwise it was, we were like, we're not going to re-record vocals, we're not going to re-record anything, because we just didn't have that type of money to go back in. And then at that point you start re-recording everything, because I'm an asshole, and I'm like, that was a little off, I could do it better. Like, we were like, nope, we're not going to do that, we're just going to mix, and we're just going to take things out.
There was also one little Easter egg that we're putting on to the new album, is that we had a song that we really liked when we were recording at the time, but as we said, we learned as time goes on that we should have waited a little bit more, because we felt that the song wasn't ready to go on the album the first time. But we did go back into the studio a couple months after the album was out and just finished that song just in a quick little session. And so that song is called October Morning Flowers, and it is a new song on the album that was always envisioned to be on the album.
And it's kind of the centerpiece of the entire thing. Yeah. It like was meant to be the centerpiece, and I think the album worked without it, but when you have it in now, you're like...
Thematically and musically, it totally pulls things together on the album, makes it more cohesive.
It's really cool, for sure.
And we'll be putting that out as a single before the re-release officially comes out, so about October, because, thematic, October Morning Flowers, October for the song, and we'll be accompanying that with a video as well.
Cool.
So, kind of like, learning from our mistakes.
And so we put so the original album was 11 songs, 44 minutes. And we are taking 3 off and putting a new one on. And so it's 9 songs, 37 minutes, which I'm a fan of shorter albums. And I think 44 minutes isn't that long of an album, but
no,
37 is really clean. Like,
it's a good number.
Yeah, 37 is really clean. And it's like, I've always liked 9 songs. Some of my favorite albums are that, and I just like the 3-3-3 breakup and stuff. Shout out Purple Rain. Maybe the best example. This album is not Purple Rain, let me just say that. But anyway, so and the album now has a different opening track. Like the second song on the first release is the opener now, which is Sleep, which is the music video.
Right.
And then the third to last song from the original is now the closer, because that was like the first thing that we realized was like, oh, that was gonna be that should have been the closing track, and that's what started my mind wandering about rearranging a track list. And then when I sent one to Max, he was like, God damn it, that's better. Like that's
It was just such an obvious no-brainer that if we had considered this as an option originally,
we would have done it. Yeah.
Right.
But once we realized that is what we should have done, we thought like, okay, well, we'll do this to our greatest capacity that we can, which is, remastering and the new track list and finishing the song October Morning Flowers and putting it into the album.
Mm-hmm.
And now, as we had talked about and touched on earlier, whereas we put out A Sword of Holly as a Flora project, now A Sword of Holly will be something that we will look back on fondly as this was our debut album, and we'll certainly have other things coming in the future after that. But I think we can feel proud of ourselves again for doing something that we like to listen to and like as a project. Not that we don't like it now, but that we always knew it could have been better if once we had learned from our experience.
It was like we weren't ready to make it yet when we made it, and we were almost ready, because like I said, we didn't add any new stuff, so like everything there was there, but it was like we weren't ready to understand how you need to like leave the space, and you need to just have the focus be on a couple good things. And I think we just got to the essence of the songs a lot better across the board. I just feel like
figuring out what our strengths were and then playing to them.
Yeah, because we had a big realization that like these are really good songs. Like, why do I like them better when I play them solo on the piano than I do these mixes? And then I was like, well, let's get it closer to when you play it solo on the piano.
Right.
More of that feeling of like these are songs for the most part that are written on piano. But then like a song like International Sad Girl, which is the second to last on there, and that's like Andrew's favorite. It might be our favorite. It was Duncan's favorite who played on it. Mm-hmm. That one is so different than anything we've done, and Max wrote it on guitar when he was abroad because he didn't have a piano. And Max like doesn't really play the guitar, but did in high school. Like he knows chords, like, but he won't get up there and be like jamming on the guitar on stage. But he wrote the song on guitar, and it was like definitely harkening back to his love of like 90s bands like Modest Mouse and
Built to Spill.
We
saw Talia Hall.
Very cool.
Yeah. And so I think that song we then we just like, it's kind of psychedelic. It's very ballady. It's kind of spacey and like a sort of a Pink Floyd sort of way. That was a lot of the inspiration that went into it. And I think that is an example of like a song that doesn't sound anything like we're doing now, but we were like, this is a dynamite song, and it's like a studio song. And if we have a guitarist in the future, we'll definitely bring it back. But it's an example of one where we were like, that doesn't have to sound like what we're doing now. It was written, But yeah, I think like the re-release, just to be hyped about it again, I'm gonna want to talk about it again, and like as you've seen, we've been hyped to talk about it. If we had not done that, if you would have brought up the album to us, we would have been like, we would have went down a different road. So I think that's really important, that we feel good about promoting it again, and we're gonna have a smarter rollout. And like, we're not gonna pretend it didn't come out before, but before long, it will be the version of the album. Because we're taking the other one down and just doing a swap.
No shame in accepting your past and future.
No, definitely. And that'll be a little gem for people who continue to follow you in the future to say, you like this. This is what they sounded like on their actual first release.
Yeah,
because you pushed physical copies, didn't you?
We did.
So that's CDs, and
that's
pretty
cool.
That's a story for people to tell their grandkids.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I hope people are like slinging those around in 20 years for like thousands of dollars on eBay or something. Like, that's the dream. Like, I got the original Flora Sword of Holly release. But we're gonna leave it up on Bandcamp because I don't want to assume that there are fans who like won't miss versions, that were on.
That's a good thought.
So it's like, we'll leave it up there, and we'll probably just label it like, I don't know. We'll figure out how to label it. But Bandcamp's not as like strict in terms of the visual that we want like the Spotify to be. Because Spotify, we just want central streams going in one place.
Right.
But yeah, like, we're super excited about that. And then we're gonna cap the year with that, and then 2020 is like all about
Touring.
Album 2.
Touring and album 2. We're gonna go into album 2 phase, and album 2 is pretty much written now. So like we're gonna record that next year, and
Okay.
yeah, we're
Very
gonna be
cool.
like arranging and demoing the second half of this year, recording into the next year, and then don't ask me when it's coming out because we're gonna be smart about it. Like
It's okay.
We'll come back and do another podcast.
Yeah,
yeah, we'll come back and do that podcast. And
Hell,
talk
you
about
can
that.
you can come back whenever you want.
Oh, yeah,
the whole
absolutely.
point of this whole show is that it's not like it's an evergreen concept. You can always give people some new lessons that you've learned along the way. Doesn't need to be at the release of an album. So if you feel the itch, you just call me up and come over.
Absolutely,
we'll have to do that.
We'll learn the lesson tomorrow.
Yeah.
you know, like absolutely. But yeah, go ahead if you want to do the roundup.
We'll kind of get ready to wind the show down with the roundup of lessons that Flora has given us today, or the two masterminds behind Flora, I should say, because there are 2 other members that are not present today.
Yes, masterminds.
So, I mean, the first thing that I pulled out, and clarify any of these if I've kind of gotten the wrong idea, but the first one I got is like waiting can be good, but make sure that the quality is worth the wait. Not just the quality, but you know, the realism. As you've been kind of shaving people off, you've taken the album down to like more of a bare bones approach that more reflects who you are today.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, lay the groundwork. That's something that we touched on a few times tonight. Just like making sure that your release schedule is, you know, with different outlets, and making sure that you have multiple reasons for people to want to look for your music. Like, yes, we've got this coming out, and in a couple weeks we got this coming out.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Intent is just like
Intent,
huge.
yeah.
And
Release with
patience.
intent.
And showing your intent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Less is more. Like fewer members for you made for a more refined sound. Smaller rooms makes for a more intimate atmosphere. It kind of works on a few different levels.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just doing the little things well is probably more important than doing the big things wrong. You know
Sure.
what I mean?
That's
gotta
a good
work your
way to put
up.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Support the scene, which you know
Always.
seems like an obvious thing, but is not always obvious. Be present and available to help people, and kind of like don't do it going in with like an expectation that they will help you, but just form this good lasting friendship with someone who will then in turn hopefully, you know, turn around and scratch your back a little,
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
but not because they owe you,
No.
because
yeah,
because you two are close.
Right,
Yeah.
because they want to, and
Right.
because we want to, for sure.
Keep plugging, be persistent. Kind of obvious one there. Other people's success is not your failure.
Big one.
Big one. Big time.
Especially in this era of social media, like mental health is so crazy when you're playing the comparing game. So like compare positively, you know.
Yeah.
Like aspire to be what these people are doing for sure, but don't
Right.
don't
tear
knock
any,
yourself.
Yeah, don't tear anybody down.
Yeah, and other people too. Yeah, don't tear them down for sure.
We are about at the end, but the one that I really liked is not every song is meant to be played live.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so true. Like I've written songs or been in bands with songs that were written that just like songs were, you know, too rough to play live because of speed, or because we didn't have the members with us that we had at the first time, or for whatever reason, and like kind of keeping it as this a shining example of what you can do in a studio is not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's like the last 3 Beatles albums or whatever. I mean, like, so yeah, studio stuff is good for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
And,
thanks again for having us. It's
absolutely,
been really fun.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys came by.
Yeah, this was awesome. I'm glad, and we're down to do this whenever.
We kept the cat count down to 3
Today.
today.
Yeah, he was going crazy in the beginning, but I think
Was.
He gave up on us.
He gave up when he did his most creative thing and still got knocked away. Like,
Amazing.
Yeah. My lovely better half has just returned home and is discovering the toy that he's broken after we've only had it for Domingo the Flamingo.
that's a good way to end
Will
it.
be laid to rest, just like this episode. Thanks you all for listening, and check back at Gig Pray Love, where you do the gig, you pray it went well, and do what you can to make that happen, and you love what you do at the end of it all. Thanks again. Welcome everyone to the Gig Pray Love podcast. My name is Sam. I will be your host today, and for all other days. Checking in to give you all the best in tips and tricks from industry professionals and people who have really lived what they are talking about. Check in with us 2 times a month for new episodes, and we will try and give you the best that we got. Thanks for listening.